Please welcome to the stage Ryan Fields.
Okay, so it is now my pleasure to introduce Ryan Fields, who is the Chief of Surgical Oncology and the leader of the Solid Tumor Therapeutic Program at the Albin J. Siteman Cancer Center and the Barnes Jewish Hospital and Washington University. And he will talk to us about the Cancer Moonshot program with specific reference to the participant engagement and cancer genome sequencing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as a surgeon, I'll say in follow-up to that last session, I'm happy to talk to anyone about drains and stents anytime. Just find us. So it's really my privilege to present today. And as the slides come up here, the title of the talk is an update on our participant engagement in cancer genome sequencing program at Washington University. I'll say PE-CGS just because it's a mouthful for the whole program, and I'll talk a little bit about what that is and how it synergizes with the Cancer Moonshot. And really importantly, how this is a research program and a research project that, quite frankly, would not be possible without the partnership of the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation. I can't thank Stacy and Melinda for their partnership, and I mean that in the truest sense of the word. This is a partnership between physicians and researchers, patients and caregivers, and groups like the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation. So no conflicts of interest or disclosures, no off-label use. Let's go back to the Cancer Moonshot, which I'm sure many in this room are familiar with. The original Cancer Moonshot back in 2015. That was when then President Obama turned to then Vice President Biden and told him he was going to have a mission to reduce cancer deaths by 50% over 20 years. And infuse $1 billion of new money into research. And he made Joe kind of in charge of that. And so we go back to 2015, and the first thing that Vice President Biden did was assemble a blue ribbon panel of experts in cancer across the spectrum of basic and translational and public health research, and said, well, how are we going to spend this money? As an update, of course, there's been a reinvigoration of the Cancer Moonshot, kind of round two, that now President Biden is infusing even more money with the goal of reducing cancer deaths by another 20%, by another 50% over the next 20 years. So this momentum continues because of a lot of the success. So I know this is small print, but I put the website down at the bottom as well. This is the Cancer Moonshot page at the National Cancer Institute. If you go on there, you can see the initiatives that the Blue Ribbon Panel identified across the spectrum of cancer research, everything from pediatric cancers to tumor atlases, all sorts of initiatives. And the initiative that I'm going to focus on, this is a list of all of them, is the one that was to establish a network for direct patient engagement. This is where gaps in research were identified, where patients and participants, people in this audience, caregivers, were not as actively engaged in research as they could or should be, and that was making the research have a lot of gaps. This is the link on that direct patient engagement website, and this is where the PE-CGS initiative or Cancer Moonshot program came from. And when we at Washington University were thinking about this goes back to, again, 2015, 2016, as this matured, we really wanted to look at cancers in line with the PE-CGS program that were either rare and understudied cancers, or were cancers where specific demographics within that cancer group were rare, understudied, and underrepresented. So around that time is when I really started to have interaction quite a bit with the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation, and of course the Mutations Matter campaign that they initiated, which is just a paradigm for how we think about cancer now in 2023 with routine sequencing and making patients aware of that so that they push that amongst their physicians and their team. And part of the gap that the PE-CGS and Cancer Moonshot program identified was patients with rare and understudied cancers were very reluctant to participate in clinical trials at times, and for some, and in a lot of ways, they were reluctant to participate specifically in clinical trials that involved cancer genome sequencing. And it was relatively unclear why this was the case. The observation was made, but the reasons were not well understood. Some of that may have been related to what you do with that data. Is my genetic sequencing going to end up in the hands of an insurance company or an employer? What does it mean for my family members? Things like that. But again, these were kind of gestalts that people had, but not necessarily hadn't been studied all that well. This is kind of verbiage from the PE-CGS website to study cancers in minority populations and understudied cancers, to increase recruitment of these populations to research so we can learn more about these cancers, to improve healthcare, promote and support direct engagement of diverse and underrepresented cancer patients. So when they put out the RFA for funding, this is pretty broad. I mean, you could imagine this is pretty broad language. You could really come up with a lot of ways to do this. So this was our program. Again, it's small, but a big part, small print, but a big part of what we're studying is cholangiocarcinoma. We're also studying colorectal cancer in Black patients under the age of 50 and multiple myeloma in Black patients. These are two cancer types that are more common than cholangio, but in those patient populations, very understudied and very not understood why they respond differently to different treatments. In big part, a lot of the studies in those cancer types are overrepresented by predominantly white upper-class populations. So again, that's where the gap exists. And as many probably remember from a couple weeks ago in some of the new cancer metrics, the early onset colorectal cancer under the age of 50 increased from 10 to 20% of all colorectal diagnosis relatively recent over the past 10 years. So this is an increasing issue. So I'm going to focus on cholangiocarcinoma, of course. These slides are familiar to people in terms of the incidence of cholangiocarcinoma, the outcomes, and the importance of genetic mutations, as was touched upon in the last session and many are aware of. So we really want patients with cholangiocarcinoma, of course, to undergo genetic testing, to be able to participate in studies that involve genomics and do that in a way that represents the broad population of cholangiocarcinoma. This is our team. So I'm privileged to work with an incredible group at Washington University. The principal investigators include myself, Graham Kolditz, who's the head of our Division of Public Health Sciences. He's an internationally known cancer epidemiologist who came from the Harvard system many years ago and has been at WashU for a long time. Bettina Drake, another one of my colleagues who's in public health sciences, a world-renowned expert in cancer health disparities and public health cancer research. And then Li Ding, who's been instrumental in basically putting cancer genomics on the map. She's been one of the leaders of the TCGA project. She's led, too many to count, large-scale sequencing projects for cancer genomics. So proud to be a member and ride on the coattails of an all-star team. We have 3 units of our team. So there's this in red, green, and blue here. The PEU is the Participant Engagement Unit. Standing over by the door, Hassani Bland. Hassani, raise your hand over there. And Danielle Grasso. Hassani and Danielle really lead our recruitment efforts. They have a table outside here. They'll be around for the meeting and really are a direct point of contact for how we recruit patients into this study. The EOU is a unit that's led by Dr. Drake. Jessica Mozerski, I don't know if I see Jessica out in the crowd, is here, and she's standing in the back. And Erin Lindberger, Erin is here, yep, out in the back. And where's Brianna? Is Brianna back there as well? So these are 3 of our team members who really, with Bettina, lead the EOU. This is how we are going to evaluate patients that are part of this study. To again understand the impact of participating in this study. And then the GCU is kind of the scientific arm of this, led by Dr. Ding, that's going to do all this incredible sequencing and work to learn more about cholangiocarcinoma in unprecedented ways. Here's the kind of meat and potatoes of why I'm in front of you all today. You see the cholangiocarcinoma logo on there. You also see Fight Colorectal Cancer, the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation, the other 2 patient advocacy arms. We can't do this research in these rare and understudied populations and cancers without partnership with groups like the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation. So as you'll see, as we've gotten this off the ground in the past year or 2, it's been because of the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation, because of the webinars that we've done, because of the outreach, because of Melinda's involvement in our patient advisory board, and to be able to reach out to patients and participants and recruit them into this study requires that partnership. This is all really small print, and this is purposefully to show you that what we're going to be doing is a lot of very complex analysis with tissue that is already obtained from patients with cholangiocarcinoma. So as we recruit patients from around the country, which we can do a number of different ways, including at the meeting here and through our partners around the country at different cancer centers, it doesn't require any visits for patients to come to St. Louis, to Washington University. It requires a lot of web-based, phone-based, mail-based, video-based interaction with Danielle and Hassani and our recruitment team, and then with the EOU with survey work and focus groups and follow-up. So we do the legwork to get biopsies that have been done that are already in pathology labs to be able to do all the sophisticated genomics that we used to not really be able to do off small biopsies or tumor samples that were preserved in formalin or were not fresh. But we can do an incredible amount, and Lee is really on the tip of the spear leading with advancing this science so that we can do more with less, incredible amounts to learn about the tumor microenvironment, how immunotherapy works, how cancer genomics is important, how different patient populations respond differently to different treatments. So a lot of different things that we're going to do that are unbelievably sophisticated. I think of myself as understanding this, but I barely understand it compared to Dr. Ding and her team's understanding. Again, the partnership with the patient advocacy groups and patients is both for reporting of metrics, recruitment of patients, to return results to patients and understand what that means and how we can do better with that, how informed consent works. One of the most exciting things we were excited that our IRB allowed us to do is if we approach a patient for this study and they decline, we can follow up with them with kind of a second study that has nothing to do with this study, but really understands why they declined this study. We really want to understand that process because there's barriers that we think we understand, as I alluded to, but we probably don't really. And if we're really going to improve this process of broad representation of cancer clinical trial participation, we need to understand those barriers in a very rigorous fashion, and I think we're going to be able to do that. Again, this is a busy slide of how a patient would kind of work through participating in this process, from recruitment to us obtaining their health records and information, to importing that into our system, to requesting and obtaining tumor biopsies that have already been done, to the interviews and the process of returning results back to patients in different ways that we hope are very understandable and meaningful to patients. And there will be very different ways of returning those results to patients based on their preferences. One of the EOU's projects is a randomized clinical trial of how we will return results to patients to try to see if we can do better than the standard of care. And then this figure is meant to be kind of cyclical, an iterative process of once we find something that maybe we should tweak, we do that and then measure how that impacted things. This is a 5-year grant. We're just really in kind of year one, I would say. When it got funded, it was kind of in the middle of COVID, so we had some challenges with getting it off the ground with hiring and things like that, but we've developed all the surveys. We have our genomic characterization pipeline set up. We have our return of results report that we'll be using. We started enrolling patients in October of 2022, so not too long ago. And we've have had several meetings of our patient advisory groups and as I alluded to, some webinars and things with the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation. The website, which is shown at the bottom, is up and running for patient information and recruitment. As I mentioned, Danielle and Hassani will be men in the booth that we'll have here for the entire meeting to hope to interact with many of you to recruit patients. I'll be talking with my colleagues at the physician and nurse practitioner other levels with ways that we can recruit from other centers. And really, it's going to be a partnership. Here's kind of where we stand as of April 5th. You can see cholangiocarcinoma in green represents nearly 2/3 of our patients, and you can see kind of the trajectory of enrolling patients has really gone up quite a bit over the past couple months as we're really starting to ramp up. And now that some of the meetings like this are going on, we really hope this kind of exponentially increases over the next several months and years. Like I said, this is a 5-year initial project, so we're really into kind of year 1.5 and getting things ramped up. There's a picture of Hassani and Danielle. there's the phone number, the website, the email for this program, and again, they'll be outside for the majority of the meeting. It's hard to miss Hassani as well. He's got a great green leather blazer on in the spirit of the foundation, which is fantastic. So we're really excited to work with everyone. And as I sort of finish, we'll have some time for questions here too at the microphones, but you know, on a personal note, it's just been such a privilege to work with this group. When I go back and think, you know, I learned about the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation really through a patient who I think is familiar to many in this room, Kate Telak, who had cholangiocarcinoma, was from Southern Illinois, moved up to Rochester, New York, and was in the midst of a move, was a young 30-something when this happened, became unbelievably involved with the organization. And as I've kind of seen this organization evolve from a small room to a huge room like this over the years, from the things on the website, the initiatives, Mutation Matters, the dietary program, the exercise programs, all of the information they have for patients, I can tell you it's not a clinic goes by where a patient of mine with cholangiocarcinoma doesn't thank God, thank anyone that this organization exists for them, because they get so much support, information, and follow-up and feedback, and just ways to continue to understand, fight their disease, and in situations like Kate's, also have an opportunity to give back. So I'll just close by saying thank you. We really appreciate the privilege of the podium and the platform here, and really look forward to interacting with so many people today. Thank you. I'll probably just maybe stand here for a few minutes if people do have questions, and then if you don't have direct questions, you know, I'll be around the rest of the couple days, Danielle and Hassani, as I mentioned, so feel free to corner us anytime.
Anyone have questions for Dr. Fields?
Well, we look forward to interacting with everyone. Thank you.